The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the Valiant, but Commander Jake Morrison knew better. He had been staring at the same 3 alien ships for almost 72 hours now. They sat there in space just beyond the invisible line that marked where human territory began. They weren't moving forward. They weren't moving back. They were just waiting. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the communication panel. Lieutenant Sophie Hayes sat there with her headset on, listening to the silence between the stars. She had been monitoring all frequencies since the Zenthari ships arrived, hoping for some clue about what they wanted. "Anything new?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Sophie shook her head. "Same as before, sir. They sent the standard greeting when they arrived. They asked for permission to pass through our space. We told them no. Now they're just sitting there." Jake walked to the large window that showed the black emptiness of space. Somewhere out there, beyond what his eyes could see, 3 massive alien vessels waited. The Zenthari were not enemies. They had never fought with humans. They were traders, travelers, diplomats. They probably thought humans were being unreasonable. "They don't understand," Jake said quietly. "They think we're like the other species, territorial, proud, afraid of outsiders. Should we explain again?" Sophie asked. Jake thought about this. The Zenthari had been part of the Galactic Council for thousands of years. They knew hundreds of alien species. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had maps of the entire galaxy, showing who owned what, who traded with whom, who fought over which systems. But on every one of those maps there was a blank space, a region marked only with a simple warning: human territory. Most species understood what that warning meant. They had learned through experience, through stories, through the cold mathematics of warfare. But sometimes a species like the Zenthari came along. They were peaceful. They had never seen real war. They looked at humans and saw a small civilization with modest ships and limited territory. They didn't understand why everyone else went out of their way to avoid human space. "Send them the full historical packet," Jake ordered. "Everything. Every battle. Every war. Every species that tried to cross our borders." Sophie's fingers moved across her console. "Sir, that's a lot of data. It might take them days to review it all." "Good," Jake said. "Maybe they'll actually read it this time." The packet was enormous. It contained 60 years of recorded history since humans first met aliens and ventured into space. At first, the galaxy had welcomed humanity. Here was a new species, they thought. Young, curious, weak enough to not be a threat. Many species had offered friendship. Others had offered trade agreements. A few had offered protection in exchange for resources, but some species had seen opportunity in a different way. The Krell Empire had been the first to test humanity. They were warriors, proud of their military might. They had conquered dozens of worlds and believed strength was the only thing that mattered. When they looked at Earth, they saw a single planet with basic defenses and a small population. Easy prey, they attacked without warning. Their first strike destroyed 3 human colonies. Their fleet was massive, their weapons powerful. By every calculation, humans should have surrendered within weeks. The Krell offered terms: become a subject species, pay tribute, accept Krell governors on Earth. In return, the killing would stop. Humanity's answer was simple: no. The war lasted 11 years. The Krell won almost every major battle. Their ships were better. Their soldiers were stronger. They occupied human colonies and destroyed human fleets. Reports from Krell commanders showed their confusion growing as the years passed. Why wouldn't these humans stop fighting? They had lost. Anyone with sense could see that. Why did they keep coming back? Human civilians fought with mining equipment when their military was defeated. Human soldiers fought until their ammunition ran out, then fought with blades and tools. Human ships, damaged and drifting, would deliberately crash into Krell vessels as a final act of defiance. Every human position had to be taken by force. Every human colony had to be cleared building by building. There were no surrenders. There were no retreats. The war ended when a small team of human soldiers infiltrated the Krell homeworld. They didn't target military bases or government buildings. They went to the breeding grounds where Krell young were raised. They placed nuclear weapons there and sent a simple message: leave human space or we destroy your children. The Krell left. They never came back. Within 5 years, they applied to join the Galactic Council, specifically requesting that human territory be declared a restricted zone. After the Krell came others. The Thrace sent raiders who thought they could steal from human cargo ships. They killed human civilians and took their goods. Humanity responded by tracking every Thrace raider back to their home bases and destroying them all in a single coordinated strike. The Thrace learned that humans never forgot and never forgave attacks on their people. The Vexer Collective tried economic warfare, attempting to blockade human trade routes. Humans simply stopped trading with anyone who cooperated with the blockade. They were willing to suffer economic hardship rather than submit to pressure. The blockade collapsed in months. Species after species learned the same lesson. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the most advanced. They were not the largest in numbers, but they possessed something that terrified every other civilization. They would rather die fighting than live under someone else's control. Jake watched the display screen as the data packet transmitted to the Zenthari ships. He wondered what they would think when they saw the battle recordings. Would they understand that humans didn't want to be aggressive? Would they realize that every human conflict had started because someone else attacked first? Hours passed. The bridge crew changed shifts. Sophie was replaced by another communications officer, but Jake stayed at his post, watching and waiting. Finally, after what felt like forever, the Zenthari ships began to move. They were turning, not toward human space but away from it. Their course plotted on Jake's display showed them taking the long route around human territory. It would add months to their journey, but they were doing it anyway. A message came through. It was short, translated from Zenthari into human language by the ship's computer. "We understand now. Thank you for the warning." Jake felt tension drain from his shoulders. Another species had learned. Another potential conflict had been avoided. The line around human space would remain uncrossed for another day. He looked at the galactic map displayed on his screen. The blank space that represented human territory seemed small compared to the vast civilizations around it. But that blank space was surrounded by red warning markers, placed there by mutual agreement of every species in the Council. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans left alone were peaceful neighbors. Humans threatened were something else entirely, something ancient, something that would burn the galaxy down before accepting defeat. The Zenthari understood now. Like everyone else, they would respect the line and find another way. Dr. Lisa Grant had always loved history. Even as a child on Earth, she had spent hours reading about ancient wars and old civilizations. When humanity joined the galactic community, and the Interspecies Archive opened its doors to human scholars, Lisa knew exactly where she wanted to work. The archive was located on Kepler Station, a massive structure floating in neutral space between multiple star systems. It held the collected knowledge of 400 alien species spanning 12,000 years. Lisa had been working there for 15 years now, studying military conflicts and how different species fought their wars. Most wars in galactic history followed patterns. They started over resources or territory. They involved clear military objectives. They ended when one side achieved victory or both sides agreed to negotiate. Even the most brutal conflicts had rules, expectations, ways that civilized species conducted themselves. Then Lisa found the classified files on humanity. She had stumbled onto them by accident while researching the Krell Empire's military history. A reference to the human conflict appeared in several Krell military reports, but when she tried to access the full files, she found they were locked behind security protocols. That was unusual. The archive's entire purpose was open access to historical information. Lisa spent 3 days requesting permission to view the files. When approval finally came through, she settled into her research station with a cup of coffee and began reading. Within an hour, the coffee was cold and forgotten. Within 3 hours, she had stopped taking notes. She just stared at the screen, trying to understand what she was seeing. The Krell-Human War had started in 2187. The Krell were one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy at that time. Their empire controlled 43 star systems. Their fleet numbered over 10,000 warships. Their soldiers were bred for combat, standing over 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and enhanced strength. Humanity had one inhabited planet. They had recently established 3 small colonies on nearby worlds. Their entire defensive fleet consisted of roughly 800 ships, most of them converted civilian vessels. They had no standing army beyond planetary defense forces. By every logical calculation, the war should have lasted weeks. Months at most. It lasted 11 years. Lisa pulled up the battle reports. The first engagement at Colony 7 showed Krell forces destroying the human defense fleet in under 6 hours. Standard procedure at that point would be for the losing side to request terms of surrender. Instead, human ground forces on the colony continued fighting for another 2 months. They used civilian equipment as weapons. They turned factories into bomb-making facilities. When Krell soldiers entered human cities, they found every street was a battle, every building a fortress. One Krell commander's report caught Lisa's attention. The translation read, "The humans fight without logic. We destroyed their military forces. We occupy their territory. We offer reasonable terms. Yet they do not surrender. They cannot win. They must know this. But still they fight." Lisa scrolled through years of combat reports. The pattern repeated everywhere. Humans lost 90% of the major space battles. The Krell were simply too strong, too experienced, but every loss only seemed to make humans more determined. They developed new tactics. They built weapons in hidden facilities. They sent small strike teams that caused chaos behind Krell lines. The Krell occupied 7 human colonies over the course of the war. Each time they expected the human population to accept their rule. Each time they found themselves fighting an endless guerrilla war. Human civilians would pretend to cooperate, then sabotage equipment. Children would memorize Krell patrol routes and feed information to resistance fighters. Elderly humans would walk up to Krell soldiers with bombs strapped to their bodies. Lisa read a psychological report filed by a Krell military analyst in the 7th year of the war. It was disturbing. "I no longer understand human behavior. We have killed millions of them. We control their worlds. We have destroyed their fleets multiple times. Yet they rebuild. They recruit more soldiers from civilians. They refuse every offer of peace that does not include our complete withdrawal. It is as if they do not understand the concept of defeat. Or perhaps they do understand and they simply do not care." The war ended in a way that chilled Lisa to her core. A small team of human special forces infiltrated the Krell homeworld. Lisa didn't know how they managed it. The files were heavily redacted. But somehow they reached the Krell breeding facilities, the sacred sites where Krell young matured for their first 3 years of life. The humans placed nuclear weapons there. Not military targets, not government buildings. They went straight for the children. Then they sent a message to the Krell High Command. "Leave human space immediately or we detonate the weapons." The message included a simple addendum. "You came to our worlds. You killed our children. You destroyed our homes. Now you understand what we are willing to do. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. Leave or face extinction." The Krell left within 48 hours. Every soldier, every ship, every administrator. They abandoned the 7 colonies they had occupied and retreated back to their own territory. They never returned to human space. They never made threats against humanity again. Within 5 years, they joined the Galactic Council and formally requested that human territory be designated a restricted zone. Lisa sat back in her chair, trying to process what she had read. She pulled up files on other human conflicts. The Thrace raids, the Vexor blockade, the Pelnar incident. Each one showed the same pattern. Other species would attack or threaten humans. Humans would respond with a level of ferocity that shocked their opponents. The conflicts would end not with human victory, but with the other species deciding that fighting humans was not worth the cost. She found a report, filed by a Galactic Council military advisor after the Krell-Human War. It was marked as recommended reading for all Council military personnel. Humans are not the strongest species we have encountered. They are not the most advanced. But they possess a psychological trait that makes them uniquely dangerous. They do not know how to surrender. Or perhaps they know how but refuse to accept it as an option. When threatened with extinction, they respond by threatening extinction in return. They will sacrifice everything, everyone, their entire civilization, for even a small chance to destroy whoever threatens them. This makes traditional military calculus meaningless when fighting humans. There is no acceptable victory condition against an opponent who values revenge over survival. Lisa found herself reading late into the night, going through first contact reports from dozens of species. Almost all of them followed the same trajectory. Initial contact was peaceful. Then some incident would occur. Sometimes it was deliberate aggression. Sometimes it was a cultural misunderstanding. But the result was always the same. Humans would respond with overwhelming force and the other species would learn to keep their distance. The Xanthari files were particularly interesting. They had tried to pass through human space just last month. Humans refused permission. The Xanthari couldn't understand why. They were peaceful traders. They had never fought with humans. Surely humans could allow them to pass through for a few days, saving months of travel. The humans sent them historical data files. After reviewing them, the Xanthari took the long route around human space. Their ambassador's final message was included in the report. We understand now why the galactic maps show emptiness where human space exists. It is not emptiness. It is a warning. We will respect it. Lisa closed the files as morning light began filtering through the station windows. She had spent 15 years studying galactic military history, and now she understood something that changed her entire perspective. The blank spaces on galactic maps around human territory were not gaps in exploration. They were not neutral zones or unclaimed territory. They were quarantine borders. Every species in the galaxy maintained them by mutual agreement, because crossing into human space meant accepting a risk that no rational civilization wanted to take. Humans would fight to the death over the smallest intrusion. They would sacrifice their own people to punish anyone who threatened them. They followed no rules but their own. The galaxy had learned a simple lesson. Give humans their space and they would be peaceful neighbors. Cross the line and they would burn everything down, including themselves, to make you regret it. It was not a threat. It was simply how they were built, how their evolution on a violent world had shaped them into something that terrified every other species. Lisa filed her own report that morning. It was brief. Recommend continued restriction on travel through human space. Recommend all new council species receive mandatory education on human psychology and military history. The boundary around human territory is not a suggestion. It is the most important line in the galaxy. We must ensure no one ever crosses it without understanding the consequences. Kelvar had just completed his second molting when he made the boast that would change his life. He stood in the training hall among his clutchmates, his new armor plates still tender and gleaming, and declared that he would be the one to finally bring glory to the Thrace people by raiding human space. The other young warriors clicked their mandibles in approval. Kelvar was the strongest of their generation. He had scored highest on every combat simulation. His reflexes were faster than any instructor had seen in decades. When he practiced with blade and projectile weapons, he never missed his target. The humans are weak, Kelvar announced, displaying his research on a holographic screen. Look at their ships, small compared to ours. Look at their numbers, few compared to other species. Look at their weapons. Nothing special. Nothing we should fear. His clutchmates gathered around, studying the data. It was true that human vessels seemed modest. Their military forces were not the largest in the galaxy. Their technology was not the most advanced. Why did everyone avoid them? Why did the elders speak of humans with something that sounded almost like fear? I will prove that our people are braver than all others, Kelvar continued. I will organize a raid. We will take human cargo and return as heroes. The words had barely left his mouth when a shadow fell across the training hall. Commander Vex stood in the doorway, his old armor scarred from countless battles. He was a legend among the Thrace, a warrior who had fought in 12 major conflicts and earned more honor marks than any living soldier. Kelvar, Vex said quietly. Come with me. The tone made it clear this was not a request. Kelvar followed the old warrior out of the training hall, through the corridors of the military complex, until they reached a place Kelvar had never seen before. The Memorial Hall. The walls were covered in stone tablets, each one carved with names, thousands of names, Thrace warriors who had died in battle over the centuries. It was the most sacred place in their culture, where families came to remember their fallen. Vex walked to one section of the wall. His claw traced across dozens of names clustered together. 20 years ago, he began. A group of young warriors thought as you do now. They believed humans were weak. They saw an opportunity for glory and honor. Kelvar's antennae perked forward. What happened? They found a human cargo vessel. Just one ship, transporting civilian supplies between colonies. The warriors numbered 50. The finest fighters of their generation, they attacked the vessel, believing it would be an easy victory. Vex pulled up a holographic recording. Kelvar watched as Thrace warriors boarded the human ship. At first, everything went as expected. The human crew was small, perhaps 20 individuals. They had no military weapons, no combat armor. They should have surrendered immediately. They did not surrender. The recording showed the human crew fighting with tools. Mining equipment became weapons. Industrial cutters became deadly in close quarters. The humans used the ship itself as a weapon, venting atmosphere in sections where Thrace warriors gathered, using electrical systems to create deadly shocks, releasing pressurized chemicals that burned Thrace skin. The battle lasted 6 hours, Vex said quietly. 19 of our warriors died. The rest retreated in shame. They had expected weak prey. They found something else. Kelvar stared at the recording. But we won the battle. We drove them off their ship, did we? Vex asked. Watch the end. The recording showed the final moments. The surviving humans had gathered in the ship's bridge. They were injured, bleeding, clearly dying. A Thrace warrior demanded their surrender. The human in charge, a female with blood covering half her face, simply smiled. She reached for a control panel. The ship's fusion reactor overloaded. The explosion destroyed the cargo vessel and killed the remaining 3 Thrace warriors who were still aboard. The humans chose to die rather than be captured. 80% of the humans died in that battle, Vex said, but they considered it a victory because they refused to surrender. That is what humans are like. They do not measure success the way we do. Kelvar felt his confidence shaking. But surely our military could defeat them in a proper war. Vex's mandibles clicked in dark amusement. You still do not understand. Let me show you what happened after the raid. He pulled up fleet movement records. Kelvar watched in growing horror as the story unfolded. The human government had tracked the raiding party back to their origin. They spent 6 months studying Thrace military positions, watching patrol routes, analyzing defensive capabilities. They never made contact. They never issued warnings. They simply watched and learned. Then, in a single night, human strike forces hit every Thrace military outpost simultaneously. Not colonies, not civilian targets, just military facilities. They destroyed our defensive satellites, our weapon depots, our command stations. In 8 hours, they crippled our entire defensive fleet. They did not stay to occupy territory, Vex continued. They did not demand tribute or resources. They did not negotiate. They simply punished us and left. A message was transmitted to our high command. Do not touch our civilians. Do not enter our space. If you do, this happens again. Kelvar stared at the tactical displays. The precision of the human attack was terrifying. They had struck dozens of targets across multiple star systems, all perfectly coordinated, all chosen to cause maximum military damage with minimal civilian casualties. It was not the work of a weak species. It was the work of predators who had been studying their prey. But why do we not fight back? Kelvar asked. We are warriors. We do not accept such humiliation. Vex turned to face him directly. Because we are warriors, not fools. The humans taught us a lesson that day. They are not interested in honor or glory. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight only for survival, and when they fight, they do so with complete commitment. No rules, no restraint, no mercy. He pulled up more files. After our incident, I studied human history. Do you know where they come from? A deathworld. Their planet has extreme weather, dangerous predators, and diseases that kill in days. Humans evolved as hunters who could run prey to exhaustion. They would chase animals for days until they collapsed. That same psychology applies to warfare. They do not strike quickly and retreat. They pursue. They remember. They do not stop until the threat is eliminated. Kelvar looked at the memorial wall again. 19 names from a single failed raid. How many more would there be if they actually went to war with humans? The Krell Empire once fought humans, Vex said. The Krell were the strongest military power in the galaxy. They invaded human space, expecting quick victory. The war lasted 11 years. The Krell won almost every battle. They occupied human worlds. They destroyed human fleets. But the humans never surrendered. They just kept fighting. When the Krell killed human soldiers, civilians took up weapons. When the Krell destroyed human ships, they built new ones in hidden factories. Finally, humans infiltrated the Krell homeworld and threatened to destroy their breeding grounds. The Krell, who had never retreated from any enemy, fled human space and never returned. Vex's voice dropped even lower. That is what humans are capable of. They do not have the strongest ships. They do not have the most advanced weapons. But they have something more dangerous. The absolute refusal to accept defeat. When you corner them, they do not beg for mercy. They show you what they are willing to destroy, including themselves, to take you down with them. Kelvar felt something he had never experienced before. It was not exactly fear. Thrace warriors did not fear battle, but it was respect mixed with a cold understanding. Humans were not prey. They were something evolution had created on a harsh world, where only the most stubborn, the most persistent, the most willing to sacrifice everything could survive. The galactic maps show empty space where human territory exists, Vex said. That is not because humans are weak. It is because every species that learned what they truly are decided it was better to go around them than through them. We give them their space. They leave us alone. That is the arrangement, and it has kept the peace for 60 years. Kelvar looked at the memorial wall one last time. Those 19 warriors had died because they did not understand what they were facing. They thought they were raiding weak prey. They discovered too late that humans were something else entirely. I will not raid human space, Kelvar said quietly. Vex clicked his mandibles in approval. Good. You are wiser than those who came before you. Perhaps your generation will remember the lesson without needing to learn it through death. As they walked back through the corridors, Kelvar thought about the galactic maps he had studied. That blank space around human territory was not a gap. It was a warning that every species in the galaxy respected, the line that must not be crossed. And now Kelvar understood why. Ambassador Ryan Cooper had served as Earth's representative to the Galactic Council for 6 years. In that time, he had learned to recognize patterns in how alien species behaved. One pattern repeated itself with almost predictable regularity. Whenever a new species joined the Council, someone would eventually approach him with the same question. Today, it was the Pelthans. Ryan sat in the Neutral Zone Cafe on Council Station, sipping coffee that had been imported from Earth at considerable expense. Across from him sat a Pelthan diplomat whose name translated roughly as Brightwing. The Pelthans were bird-like creatures, covered in colorful feathers that shifted colors based on their emotions. Right now, Brightwing's feathers showed the blue-green pattern that indicated curiosity mixed with confusion. Ambassador Cooper, Brightwing began, their translator converting melodic chirps into clear English. We mean no offense, but we must ask. We have reviewed the available data about your species. We have studied the galactic maps. We do not understand why everyone fears you. Ryan smiled. He had given this explanation so many times that he could recite it in his sleep, but he never got tired of it. Understanding was important. Misunderstanding led to conflict, and conflict with humans never ended well for anyone. What specifically confuses you? Ryan asked, knowing the answer but wanting Brightwing to articulate it. Your military forces are smaller than the Krell Empire. Your technology is less advanced than the Vexer Collective. Your population is smaller than the Zenthari Federation. Yet when borders are drawn on galactic maps, every line bends around your space. Ships are rerouted to avoid your territory even when it adds months to their journey. Trade agreements specifically exclude passage through human systems. Why? Ryan set down his coffee and pulled up a holographic display. Let me show you something. These are evolutionary charts for various spacefaring species. The display showed branching trees representing how different alien species had evolved on their homeworlds. Ryan pointed to several examples. The Zenthari evolved from herd animals. Their ancestors survived by staying together in large groups. The Pelthans, your own species, evolved from creatures that lived in flocks and used cooperation to find food. The Krell, despite being warriors, evolved from ambush predators that struck quickly and then retreated to safety. Brightwing's feathers rippled with interest. This is all correct. But what does evolution have to do with military power? Everything, Ryan said quietly. He pulled up Earth's evolutionary chart. Humans evolved as persistence predators. Do you know what that means? No, it means we're not fast. We're not strong. We don't have natural weapons like claws or venom. But we have something else: we don't stop. Our ancestors on Earth would identify prey, usually an animal much faster and stronger than them, and they would just start chasing it. The animal would run away easily, but humans would keep following. For hours, sometimes for days, the prey would rest and humans would catch up. The prey would run again and humans would follow again. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion. Then humans would make the kill. Brightwing's feathers shifted to a pattern that indicated distress. That sounds terrible. It is terrible, Ryan agreed. And that psychology doesn't go away just because we built spaceships and joined the galactic community. When humans perceive a threat, Something ancient wakes up inside us. We call it survival mode. Once it activates, we don't think about cost or consequences. We just focus on eliminating the threat no matter what it takes. He pulled up battle reports from the Krell-human war. Look at this conflict. By every logical measure, humans should have surrendered within weeks. The Krell were stronger, more experienced, better equipped. They won almost every major battle, but humans kept fighting. When our military forces were destroyed, civilians picked up weapons. When our ships were lost, we built new ones. When our colonies were occupied, we fought guerrilla wars that lasted years. But surely you must have wanted peace, Brightwing asked. Of course we wanted peace, Ryan said, but not at the cost of our freedom. That's the difference between humans and most other species. You evolved to survive by avoiding threats or by working together to scare them away. Humans evolved to pursue threats until they were eliminated. It's not rational. It's instinctive. He showed another display, this one showing economic data from the Vexor blockade. The Vexor Collective tried economic warfare against us. They blockaded our trade routes, thinking we would negotiate once our economy started suffering. We didn't negotiate. We just stopped trading with anyone who cooperated with the blockade. Our economy crashed. People suffered. But we were willing to endure that suffering, rather than submit to pressure. Brightwing was silent for a moment, processing this information. Finally, they spoke. You are saying that humans would rather destroy themselves than accept defeat? Not exactly, Ryan said carefully. We would rather risk destroying ourselves than live under someone else's control. There's a difference. We don't want to fight. We don't enjoy war. But when someone threatens our survival or our freedom, we respond with everything we have. No half measures, no calculated risks, just total commitment. He pulled up a video from first contact between humans and the Thrace. It showed a Thrace raiding party attacking a human cargo vessel. Ryan fast-forwarded to the end, where the human crew chose to destroy their own ship rather than be captured. Watch this, Ryan said. These humans knew they were going to die. They could have surrendered. Maybe they would have been taken prisoner. Maybe they would have been killed anyway. But they made a choice. If they were going to die, they would take their attackers with them. That's not logical. That's not strategic. That's pure human instinct. Brightwing's feathers had shifted to a deep purple pattern that indicated fear. This is why the galaxy avoids you. You are unpredictable, dangerous. Yes and no, Ryan said. We're actually very predictable once you understand the pattern. Leave us alone and we're peaceful neighbors. We trade fairly. We honor agreements. We help our allies. But cross our borders, threaten our people, attack our ships, and we become something else. Something that won't stop until either the threat is eliminated or we're all dead. He showed galactic maps from before and after human contact. Look at how borders used to be drawn. Species would fight over territory, win some systems, lose others, negotiate new boundaries. It was like a game with rules everyone understood. Then humans arrived. We didn't play by those rules. We don't fight for territory. We don't fight for resources. We only fight for survival, and when we fight for survival, there are no rules. Ryan leaned forward. The Krell learned this lesson the hard way. They invaded our space expecting quick victory. After 11 years of brutal warfare, they retreated. Not because we defeated them militarily. We didn't. But because we made them understand that continuing the war meant we would take the fight to their homeworld, to their civilians, to their children. We were willing to commit any atrocity, accept any cost if it meant stopping the threat to our existence. That is barbaric, Brightwing said quietly. Yes, Ryan agreed without hesitation. It is barbaric. It's the psychology of creatures who evolved on a deathworld, where only the most ruthless survived. We've built civilization on top of that psychology. We have laws and ethics and culture. But when you threaten us, when you push us into that corner, the old instincts come back. The galaxy learned this. Now they give us our space and we give them peace. Brightwing sat in silence for a long time, their feathers shifting through various patterns as they processed this information. Finally, they spoke. Our ships have been rerouted to avoid your territory. It will add 3 months to our trade route. I know, Ryan said. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Do not apologize. We understand now why this is necessary. We thought the warnings were exaggeration or propaganda, but you have shown us the truth. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, but you are the most dangerous because you do not know how to quit. Ryan finished his coffee. That's exactly right. We don't know how to quit. It's not in our nature. Every species has traits that evolution gave them for survival. Yours gave you cooperation and flight. The Krell got strength and aggression. Humans got stubbornness and the inability to accept defeat. It's not a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse. But it's what we are. As Brightwing prepared to leave, they paused. One more question, Ambassador. What would it take for humans to surrender? What would make you accept defeat? Ryan thought about this carefully. Honestly? I don't know. In our entire history, we've never been completely conquered. We've lost battles, lost wars, lost territory. But we've always come back. Always found a way to continue fighting. Maybe if you killed every last human, that would be surrender. But short of extinction? I don't think we know how. Brightwing's feathers shifted to a pattern Ryan had never seen before. Later, when he looked it up, he learned it meant respect mixed with deep concern. Within a week, all Pelthan vessels were rerouted around human space. The pattern repeated itself once again. Another species had learned. Another potential conflict had been avoided. The line around human territory remained uncrossed, respected by all who understood what crossing it would mean. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in 50 years. Representatives from all 400 member species crowded into the chamber on Council Station, their voices creating a chaos of sound that the translation system struggled to process. Fear hung in the air like a physical presence. The Vorlon collective was coming. Kelos, the Zenthari military coordinator, stood at the center holographic display showing the invasion fleet's progress. Red markers tracked hundreds of Vorlon vessels moving through space in a perfectly straight line toward the Council's core worlds. Behind them lay a trail of conquered systems, their defenders overwhelmed by the Vorlon hive mind's superior coordination. They will reach the core worlds in 6 weeks, Kelos announced, his voice cutting through the noise. Every defensive fleet we have sent has been destroyed. Our military forces cannot stop them. A Pelleran delegate raised their appendage. What about evacuation? Can we move civilians to safety? We are already evacuating, Kelos replied. But there are billions of lives at stake. We cannot move them all in time. And even if we could, where would they go? The Vorlans are moving toward the most densely populated region of Council space. Someone called out from the back of the chamber. What about requesting aid from non-Council species? The Krell? The Thrace? We have already asked. They are fortifying their own borders. No one wants to face the Vorlans directly. The chamber erupted in dozens of conversations at once. Species blamed each other for not preparing better defenses. Others suggested surrender and negotiation. A few called for desperate last stands that everyone knew would be futile. Then someone noticed the path of the Vorlon advance on the tactical display. The red line showing their projected route cut straight through one particular region of space. A region marked with special warnings on every galactic map. Human territory. The chamber fell silent as everyone realized it at the same moment. The Vorlons were taking the fastest route to the core worlds. That route crossed directly through the space that no one entered without permission, the space that even the most powerful military forces avoided. Ambassador Ryan Cooper had been sitting quietly in the human delegation section, watching the panic unfold. Now he felt every eye in the chamber turned toward him. A Zenthari counselor spoke first. Ambassador Cooper, we must request emergency passage through human space. Our refugee ships need safe transit. Our military forces need staging grounds for defensive operations. Ryan stood slowly. No, the word fell like a hammer. The chamber erupted again, this time with anger directed at the human representative. You would condemn billions to death? Someone shouted. We offer fair compensation. Another voice called out, this is a crisis. The time for territorial disputes is past. Ryan waited for the noise to die down. When he spoke, his voice was calm but firm. We will not allow foreign military forces into our space. We learned that lesson a long time ago. What happens when those forces decide they like our territory and don't want to leave? What happens when a desperate military commander decides that human resources would be useful for their war? We would never, a delegate began. Everyone says that, Ryan interrupted. Until they do. The answer is no. We will not open our borders. Kilo stepped forward, his posture showing desperation. Then what do you propose? The Vorlons will reach us in 6 weeks. Do humans intend to simply watch as the council falls? Ryan looked at the tactical display for a long moment. The Vorlon fleet was massive. Hundreds of ships, all coordinated by their hive mind intelligence. They had crushed every force sent against them. By every calculation, they were unstoppable. "We're not going to watch," Ryan said quietly. "We're going to stop them." The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence was different. It was the silence of disbelief. "Your fleet is smaller than ours," Kalos said carefully. "Your technology is not superior. How do you intend to stop what we could not?" Ryan smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several delegates step back. "Because you were trying to defend territory and minimize casualties. We don't have those constraints. We're just going to destroy them." Within 18 hours, the Earth Defense Fleet had mobilized. Captain Melissa Jordan stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiant, watching her battle group assemble. 30 human vessels, insignificant compared to the Vorlan fleet of hundreds. Council observers who had been permitted to watch from a distance transmitted their predictions back to their governments. The human fleet would be destroyed within days. The first engagement shattered those predictions. Melissa's tactical officer pulled up the Vorlan fleet's position. They're maintaining standard formation, all ships moving together like they expect traditional engagement. "They're about to learn that humans don't do traditional," Melissa said. "All ships execute pattern Delta. Hit and run, no standing engagements. Target their supply vessels and command ships only. Ignore everything else." The human fleet scattered. Individual ships began appearing at random points around the Vorlan formation, firing on specific targets, then jumping away before the Vorlons could respond. It was chaos. It was unpredictable. It was exactly what the Vorlan hive mind could not effectively counter. When Vorlan ships pursued the humans, they found themselves in kill zones. Humans had spent days seeding space with automated mines, weapon platforms, and sensor decoys. Vorlan vessels would chase a single human ship and suddenly find themselves surrounded by explosions. The Vorlans adapted. That was the strength of a hive mind. They learned from each encounter and adjusted their tactics. They began scanning for mines. They stopped pursuing isolated human ships. They tightened their formation. Humans adapted faster. Melissa began broadcasting messages directly into Vorlan space. Videos of destroyed Vorlan ships, casualty counts, maps showing how far from their home territory they had ventured. "You came here to conquer," the messages said. "But you're just dying far from home. Your queens made a mistake. Turn back now or we'll make sure none of you return." The psychological warfare disrupted the Vorlan hive mind's coordination. Queens thousands of light years away began questioning the invasion. Doubt spread through the collective consciousness like a virus. When the Vorlons split their fleet to counter human mobility, they discovered too late that humans had predicted this move. Ambushes waited at every junction. Human ships that had seemed to be fleeing were actually leading Vorlan vessels into traps. Council observers watched in amazement as the battle reports came in. The humans were outnumbered 5-1, yet Vorlan losses were mounting while human casualties remained minimal. It wasn't because human ships were better, it was because humans fought in ways the Vorlans had never encountered. "They're not trying to hold territory," a Zenthari military analyst reported. "They're not defending positions or protecting supply lines. They're just causing maximum damage with minimum risk. It's not warfare as we understand it. It's more like hunting." The war lasted 3 months. The Vorlans never reached human space. They never even got close to the border. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a grinding campaign where every advance cost them more ships, more resources, more coordination. Human attacks came from unexpected angles. Supply convoys disappeared. Command vessels were targeted with precision strikes. Finally, something unprecedented happened. The Vorlan hive queens, who had never retreated from any conflict in their entire history, made the decision to withdraw. Not just from the region, not just from the Council's core worlds, they retreated all the way back beyond the galactic rim, to territory so remote that contact would be difficult. The message they sent to the Galactic Council was brief. Humans fight without honor or logic. They accept no rules. They show no mercy. We withdraw rather than face extinction at their hands. When the human fleet returned to Council space, they were greeted as saviors. The Council chamber erupted in celebration. Delegates who had criticized Ryan Cooper weeks earlier now praised human courage and skill. Kelos approached the human delegation with formal documents. The Council wishes to offer territorial concessions as thanks. We also propose preferential trade agreements and membership on the Security Council. Ryan read through the documents and then set them aside. We don't want your territory. We don't need preferential treatment. We just want what we've always wanted, to be left alone. But you saved the Council, Kalos protested. You deserve compensation. We didn't save you for compensation, Ryan said. We saved you because the Vorlons were going to pass through our space to get to you. That made them our problem. We deal with our problems. That's what we do. He pulled up a galactic map. The border around human space was clearly marked. This line is all we need. Keep respecting it and we'll keep ensuring that nobody crosses it who shouldn't. That's the arrangement. It's worked for 60 years and it will keep working. Kalos studied the human ambassador for a long moment. You could demand so much more. The Council would give you almost anything right now. We know, Ryan said simply, but we don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to expand our territory. We just want to be left alone to live our lives. The line is enough. The galactic maps were updated that year. The border around human